Hey, this is Christian Buckley with CollabTalk, and I'm here talking today as part of the next episode here of MVP Buzz Chat with Gareth. Gareth, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Thanks for having me on the show. My name is Gareth Gudger. I'm an Office Server and Services MVP, although I primarily focus in Exchange Online. I've been an MVP since 2016. I've been in the industry for about 20 years, and kind of go by the I guess the other part of me is a super tech boy, so maybe there's a little bit of a superhero theme behind somewhere there. So
you need to be wearing a cape. I mean, I just would assume that would be the case.
I was kind of thinking, do I want to go for like a Captain America shirt today? But no, it's a little cold, so I got the sweater on today.
Well, so you're losing your accent.
Yes,
but you're in that weird place where you don't sound American and you don't sound like you get crap when you go and visit extended family as well.
Oh yeah, and it didn't even take that long. I mean, I've been in the United States for about 20 years, and actually, just a couple of years ago, I decided to become a U.S. citizen. My wife had always said, "Hey, maintain your British citizenship. Maybe we'll go live in England one day." And after 20 years, you're pretty much rooted. So. I decided, hey, I'm going to become American, and really the two things it gets me the ability to do, aside from getting, kicked out and on the wrong side of the wall, shouting at the kids, hey, I'm on the other side of the wall. The only things that really gets me is the ability to vote and the ability to also be on a jury. So I actually got my first taste of the democratic process a couple of years ago. And, I came over to the United States when I was 19. So I'd actually never even had been part of a British general election. So this was my first general election for both countries. It was a very cool experience to finally be able to vote after all these years.
Well, that is exciting. And have you served on a jury yet?
I have not done that yet. So, I don't know. I'm looking forward to that. I guess it'd be kind of cool to do it the first time, but hopefully I'm not one of these people that ends up, I hear these horror stories, they're getting called up all the time. So hopefully that doesn't happen to me.
Yeah, it's so I've been on 2 now, and I've had other court experiences of suing and thankfully winning, and but the just fun business stuff. But it is, I've never been one of those where like, oh, dreading it. It's actually, I love the whole experience. It's just the reality when you're in the middle of the project, when there is a true hardship around that. And so I've done the thing where the timing was bad. It had other travel, had to delay it a couple times. I think the second time you have to get permission to be like, look, really, this is going on. But then was able to go in and serve. And it was only like 2 days of time, and it was over pretty quick. But it's a great experience to go through that. And
yeah, I hear the horror stories that I hear from some people. It's like you don't get picked or something, but then you have to stay at the court sometimes, and you're not allowed to leave. Is that true? Or
yeah, and I just bring a book.
Okay.
If you're sitting there, and no, I mean generally, if you don't get selected and you're out and gone, it's not a big deal. But I mean, I've heard some of those stories too, where they're just like, we've got your time. And I mean, sometimes it could be because they may put you into a pool for another case that's coming up, depending on the judge, so, but I know that's all very exciting and not what we're here to talk about, of course, but it's very cool, but it's, congrats on, and you're becoming a citizen over here and participating in a very chaotic time in politics.
Yeah, I was told that I wasn't officially allowed to chant like USA or America until I became a citizen. I heard that was restricted only to citizens. So
yeah.
So now I can do the whole chanting and stuff. So,
well, yeah. So in this space, so you're Office Servers and Services. MVP, and what are you talking about and excited about lately? Kind of what are the topics that kind of have your interest, have your passion right now?
Yeah, so I think from a more higher level overview is that obviously this is we're almost getting close to that second quarter of 2018, and now we're looking at potentially all the 2019 products coming out, whether it's just Exchange 2019 or Skype for Business 2019, or even, more on your line, SharePoint 2019, and then in the Office suite as well. So I think, second half this year, we've got a lot of new stuff coming out on-prem, a lot of stuff that's been forged and developed in the cloud. And, it'd be interesting to kind of see what, we don't have too much information on that yet, but it'd be interesting to see what features get pulled back into on-prem. So I think it's really exciting to kind of, hey, what are we going to see, in the next 6 months, coming to on-prem?
That's a great point, because people that don't work very closely with Microsoft and understand that while they may talk about something 6 months, 12 months in advance, to your point, even the product team may, up until the night before announcements go out, they may go in and rewrite some of the blog posts and announcements, because they say, hey, that feature is just not ready yet, and they'll pull it back from that general availability. It's really interesting how that process works. And so there is a little bit of surprise that comes with once it actually goes live. And also Microsoft is actively talking with MVPs and customers around the previews and taking that feedback and making changes up until that release time.
Yeah, and it's amazing what the TAP program does. For anybody,
Maybe describe that for people that don't know what that is.
Yeah. So the TAP program is great because, it's basically a technical preview. If you want to be bleeding edge, you can sign up your organization to become, part of that technical preview. Now there is obviously some stipulations around it. Obviously you're under NDA, so you're getting code before it's publicly available. You do get a team of support engineers if you run into issues, but you kind of have to be on the hook for, hey, you're going to put this latest and greatest stuff into your production environment. So you got to be willing to almost be a bit of a guinea pig there. So, you can be cutting edge, but again, it also helps you to help shape the product a little bit. You're getting, if you are a company that isn't a TAP program, you have that, direct, path to the backline engineers and the product managers and stuff like that. And you can almost help shape the product a little bit and give advice, say, this feature needs more work. I'd like to see this. So there's definitely a lot of benefits. But again, it's, sometimes it's hard even for me to try and find the customers that are willing to go into a TAP program, because again, it is production. So
yeah, it's that's always the difficulty with dog fooding software. When I was a Microsoft employee, and we would get told all the time, like, you must be on this, what we now refer to as like the fast ring, of the online service, to go and get the latest and greatest version. But the problem is, when you're busy, and my last organization, I ran an operations team and had engineers and PMs, and we were customer facing. We owned the API program for the Ad Center platform, and when we couldn't, every day there were meetings with outside clients as well as internal customers. And when your laptop breaks because something is going wrong and Skype stops working internally, or whatever the solution is, just Windows breaks down, it's frustrating. And so I would always push back and delay on that, just because I didn't have a need to be on that bleeding edge of here's all the latest things. And I was busy working. And so that is something to take into consideration with the program like TAP.
TAP has to be a business decision. It can't just be, hey, my IT guys, it can't be tech led. It can't be IT led. It has to be business led. You've got to have business buy-in for it, because, potentially, like you said, you are putting your organization at some level of risk. Obviously they've had multiple rings and multiple internal dog fooding themselves. But there is a potential that some of those bugs are going to make it into those TAP builds. So, you've got to be prepared for that.
Well, and there's the other reality, just that Microsoft can go and test, but until it hits those real world scenarios. And that's why they have a program like that they have partners that are looking at the partner solutions against that new code, as well as other, just enterprise use cases of the partners themselves. And that's why you have a combination of these ISVs and SIs, so independent software vendors and strategic integrators or consulting companies that participate, as well as large end user customers. And a lot of times what they'll do as a large customer, for those that might be interested, is that they will have it running with like just a separate farm or a separate tenant within the cloud, so that it's not causing issues with their production environments across all employees, but they have it segmented over in a different space. And that makes perfect sense. But to your point, it's production code. So it's, that's what Microsoft is looking for, feedback from people that are using it in production, not just running test scenarios on a backup system.
Right, definitely.
So that's, besides, I mean, there's a lot coming out this year with 2019 releases. Anything else that's kind of, maybe out of your wheelhouse that you're looking at and saying, hey, this is just really cool?
Yeah, I'd say that the biggest thing I like is what we're seeing in the service is going to be the multi-geo stuff. And that was obviously something that was mentioned back at Ignite in September. I think it's still, you may have to keep me honest here a little bit. I believe it's still in preview, but I think it's going GA almost imminently, if not already. But the nice thing,
right? I don't know the timing of it, but I think you're right. It's not yet GA.
And the cool thing about multi-geo is it's perfect for customers that have data residency requirements. So, we've heard a lot about it, data residency, in various news forums and how that's an issue. So, it gives customers the ability to, especially for multinational companies, say if you've got, maybe your headquarters is in the United States and that's where your home geo is, that's where the bulk of your users are. And maybe you've got other users that are in other countries. Maybe you've got users in France, or you've got users in other countries that have certain data residency requirements, or maybe in Australia. You can then move that user's mailbox and OneDrive data into those other regions. Now, you can't pick what data center you're in. You can't say, for example, the US, I want to be West Coast, East Coast, Dallas or wherever. But you can say that I want to be, North America. I want to be, in Europe somewhere. I want to be in Oceania somewhere. So, it really helps. I think that Microsoft's making some really great strides here, with these data residency requirements. And I think we're kind of seeing more and more countries starting to write this into law. I think there's at least 2 countries now that have it where it says, the data has to be, within our borders. And I would honestly, I kind of predict we're going to see more European countries that are going to have that, not just to, hey, this data needs to be in the EU, but potentially maybe even this data needs to be inside our country. Now,
it is not just that requirement saying the data must be within. And then how it's handled and the differences between standards. Of course, there's a lot of talk about the GDPR, which happens. May 25th? So it's coming up very quickly. But South Africa, Australia, several other countries are coming up with very similar standards. So even though it may be like zones where that data needs to be housed, or the data centers must be within that country or within a region that's approved as part of those standards, even just the way that Microsoft is handling that, which is why you see, handling data, why you see these geo features becoming available. You see the rapid expansion of data centers. I mean, I was in South Africa in October last year, and they've got, I don't know when the dates are, but 2 data centers going live in country this year.
Yeah, they're constantly bringing them up all across the globe, and I think Microsoft is trying to help countries write law that makes sense as well. So it's kind of 2-pronged. It's like okay, we're going to give you this feature, but they're trying to work with countries to say, is this really what are you gaining from this? So I know Microsoft obviously does a lot in the legal space, with different countries, to try and guide them on what's best. But I think some of the other things to point out about the data residency as well, I mean, it's definitely going to be great for those multinational companies that have to have their user data local to them. It's not really a performance thing. Actually, it's not, Microsoft will tell you it's not for performance gains at all, even though potentially, you could have some performance gains. Really, the whole purpose of this multi-geo is for your data residency requirements. If you need a performance gain, you need to look at stuff like, hey, is my local country going out through a local internet and not shipping all of its internet traffic back to the US or something like that?
Right. That's why going and understanding your architecture and how your organization collaborates is so critical around that. So one, you may be meeting those by having your data in country. It could be then dramatically impacting that user experience. So you have to just understand the implications of making a move like that. I mean, one of the oldest scenarios, a customer that I had when I left Microsoft in 2009, so in 2009, started working with my new company, a client with headquartered in Sydney, offices in San Francisco and New York, and then the UK. And they had other different locations, but they had a very complex process just because of the way that they were sharing data. And some of the rules, even back in 2009, 2010, when I worked directly with this client, of what data was where, and that they had this set up, this complex migration replication processes in between these systems to ensure that the data was updated with the way that they were collaborating, and it was. They were looking forward to being able to move to Office 365 to improve some aspects of that. But when they did, I mean, they experienced just the nature of the way that the rules and the way that they needed to collaborate, where they then went and looked at WAN optimization and other ways of improving on that performance, because it was a major issue.
Yeah, and I think and I've certainly seen this scenario before, and I think this is what Microsoft's trying to eliminate, is that, is these weird hybrid scenarios, at least for Exchange, and I'm sure OneDrive as well, where it's like, okay, my headquarters is in the United States, maybe that's where 90% of my user base is. They're all in Office 365, but maybe I have 10% of my company in Australia. We can't move the data to our home geo in the United States, and so what you'll find is that 10% stays on maybe Exchange servers and file servers in Australia. And I think that's really what, your data residency requirements are really fixing is, hey, how do we get, this location to not have these on-prem servers anymore as well? I think that's really what it fixes in a nutshell in a lot of ways.
Right. No, it's going to be interesting as just, I think the data management, the rules, the laws change, because while you have a couple different, the EU and a few other countries that are really out there being very specific, with hey, these are things we must have. It's changing things around the world. It has a lot of other countries that were fine with the way things were, or just didn't have legislation forward, where they're now rethinking this and saying, hey, we need to look at this. And little issues like the way that the Facebook data was grabbed. It's in the news right now. Has a lot of governments looking and saying, hey, maybe we need to look more closely at doing something similar to what the EU is passed around.
Yeah. I think and I hate to say it, but I think this is why, like I made the point about Microsoft really trying to get into the legal system a little bit and help countries guide them. Because I really foresee if they didn't do that, and maybe, what they're doing is not going to help, but hopefully it will. But I really foresee this domino effect of, hey, this country does it, now a next country decides to implement it. And until you know it, you've got different laws for every single country when it comes to data residency. And I think the biggest thing about GDPR that is kind of interesting, I think the real big thing, and not just even really Office 365 or Microsoft related, is, some of the requirements of GDPR that say that, potentially, whoever it is, whether it's your clients, your vendors, they should be able to find what data you have on them and then be able to request that data to be removed. And I think those are really the bigger bits of GDPR that I'm trying to figure out how a lot of vendors are actually going to solve that.
Yeah, I just go through this experience with a service that I use that leverages Twitter data, and there's the standards just around, even like Twitter is now requiring, hey, if you're going to go out and utilize this data, which is public information, it's out there, you can go in and add and change what's around your profile, but how it's used even has to be follow certain protocols, which is limiting then a lot of these other services that go in and use this. It's bringing all these things, are bringing to the forefront. I think, again, it goes through kind of cycles, but what of my information is out there? What control do I have over that? I don't know if you're spending any time in the identity side of the whole blockchain conversation, but I mean, that's what they're trying to focus on and fix right there, is saying give the ownership, the control of of your identity, no matter where it is, whether you're signing up for Facebook or LinkedIn or sending your medical records to your doctor, that you control your identity and the information that's allowed in those in those services, in those transactions.
Yeah, and I think that's why Microsoft has really tried to. I think that's why they built the service the way they did. Your source of authority for all, your everything identity is going to be Azure AD, and they're also trying to work on this a lot. Oh, well, sorry, actually, it released in Exchange 2013 and 2016 was the hybrid modern authentication, and I think it's really because the Exchange product group wanted to get out of basically the identity space. They didn't want Exchange doing identity anymore. They said, hey, let's do hybrid modern authentication and push this off to whatever identity provider you may have, whether it's third party or whatever it might be. So, the hybrid modern auth is really kind of nice because you can kind of leverage the same authentication that you're using in Office 365 for your on-prem Exchange. But yeah, I really see that push where, at least for the Exchange product team, they're just saying, hey, let's get out of identity. And I think other workloads, I'm sure, are doing that as well.
And there's going to be some hiccups. I mean, I personally am experiencing that where I have, so I'm a big Microsoft Teams user, and I have 3 separate logins. So at my company and 2 of my customers, where I have an email and I have a separate login to their tenants. So this isn't guest user access that is to my CollabTalk ID, my primary tenant. I'm actually having to go, and there is no easy movement between those tenants. I have to go in and log off and log back in. Well, I'm actually running into problems where it's not letting go of cookies. It's not letting go of the profiles, and it's painful. I'm unable to move cleanly between those just by logging out, logging back in. So there's still some kinks to work out.
Yeah, and I've even had those issues with Yammer, just trying to, as consultants, right, we're usually juggling between various different tenants. So a lot of times you've got, this browser in private mode, this browser in another mode.
Yep.
Or if you're into Chrome, maybe you're using different profiles.
Right.
But, I've had, situations where I've logged out, of one tenant, logged back in, and gone to something like Yammer, and it's still logging me in. Yeah. With the last tenant I was in, I'm like, that's crazy.
Right.
That's got to get fixed.
Yeah, that's why I'm still using Chrome, the resource hog that it is, but it's because of those different profiles, and it just makes it so easy to move in between them. But there's no, we're dealing with it. We understand the complexity of a lot of those issues. Microsoft is working on it. And it's just, it's something I'm definitely thinking about. Maybe where in the IT world, and I'm a marketing guy in the IT world. I've been in this space for 30 years, but I'm still a marketing guy. However, I'm still doing things that are more complex than the typical end user, power user, in that I'm having to have 20 tabs open, different profiles set up as I'm moving between these different things, and sometimes testing out different software solutions, partner solutions that are in there, and it makes it messy. And I'm finding the limits of what some of the capabilities are. And that's where I tell people constantly, and I have to remind myself to do this, is to make sure that we're providing that feedback back to Microsoft so that they are getting that. So going into Microsoft Tech Community, going into user voice, talking with your contacts, especially us as MVPs, reach out to the people that we've, have relationships with inside Microsoft and let them know, hey, I'm experiencing this, are there other answers that are not yet out there fully? What else can I do here in between? Or, are you seeing this scenario? And I've brought up where I actually at MVP Summit, I got an answer to something from the engineering team and it was wrong. Went back to the client and we're like, nope, that's not it. And they're like, wow, okay. And we're still, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, I have to emphasize the user voice. It feels like there's so many people that don't know that exists.
Yeah.
But I was also at MVP Summit, and the product groups say that they really do look at what's user voice, and also look and kind of prioritize based on what has the most votes. So if
Yep.
there's a feature that you really want or something you want fixed or changed, you got to get on user voice. You got to vote. I would also recommend searching for the thing before you post
Right.
it.
Yes. No,
A lot of
that's
times
essential. Right.
yeah, a lot of times you see the 20 odd items that are all the same thing. So but yeah, I mean, the MVPs recently got a hold of a feature that we've been wanting as MVPs for a long time, because we've always hearing about this client ask, is to have a unified email signature across any Outlook or any app that we're using. And that was kind of spearheaded by Jeff Guillet, one of our fellow MVPs. And we've taken that from about 1,000 votes all the way up to 5,000 in about a week.
There's a third-party solution for that.
Yes. What are we plugging?
I'm just a fan of it. They were a former client, but Exclaimer out of the UK.
Oh yeah, Exclaimer. You got Code 2. I mean,
yeah, there's a few different things, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and that's not to take away from their business model. I mean, there's still things that, even if we get this unified signature where somebody can set up their profile, set up their signature in Outlook, and it's the same one they get on their Outlook for iPad or Outlook for whatever. The main thing is we just want the signature in the mailbox, and we want it to be the same across all devices.
Right.
I mean, there's still plenty of stuff that Exclaimer and Code 2 are doing, where they make these beautiful signatures with all the social.
Now you're pitching, all right. So
yeah, and then they track. All your social. All that.
No, there's a lot of cool. I know there's a lot of add-on to that. But look, I just experienced that where I set up my a new laptop and went in and installed that. And it's my profile. I'm actually having a difficult time adding a second Office 365 account to. Maybe we'll talk offline about that issue if you've seen it. But the fact that I'm having to then go in and copy paste in these different environments, those signature files that should be part of my profile. But
yeah, and that's the problem is it's a local thing to your computer. So you got to wipe your computer, you get a new computer, it's gone, and it has to be copy and pasted back in there, usually from one of your send items. And so that's really what we're looking for, is just that what we feel is basic functionality where every time you set up a new Outlook profile, your signature is just pushed down or it's there. So
yeah, there's a lot of fun, just the things like that are that have a lot of impact on especially small business. Like it's a big deal to go and have to deal with those kinds of things. And Microsoft, I think, is doing a great job at going in and solving a lot of these repetitive, these issues that have been kind of the traditional IT management of Exchange and SharePoint and OneDrive and other things. And it's great to see a lot of this incremental value that's being added. But when you see something that's there, that's breaking something that's causing you time and time is money, and to make sure that you're providing that feedback back to Microsoft and it's going to the right place. So again, go to the Microsoft tech community, search for the discussions around that problem, and then, as you said, go to user voice, search first, make sure that it's not already there. I've found a number of things where I've gone in and found the item and then added my vote.
Yeah.
And it only takes, I don't know if you knew this, it only takes 10 votes for Microsoft to respond to it, to look at that. So if it is something that's new, post it to user voice. Then I suggest go to tech community and post the fact that you've done that over there, and canvas the crowd to go and vote for your items so that Microsoft then responds.
Yeah, definitely. You want to get promoted up, because a lot of times it's when we were doing it as MVPs, we were hitting Twitter and stuff like that, and then the amount of people that were responding to our Twitter comments or adding comments to the poll were just like, "Oh my gosh, I've always wanted this," or "I've always," and then
it doesn't always translate over to the user voice. It's like you need to promote that fact.
Yeah. Yeah, it's shocking how many, like I said, how many people don't know about user voice. So I'm glad we're giving that a lot of air right here. It's like,
Yeah.
go find something and vote on it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's actually every time I do, that's my habit too, is when I go over like for something intentional, then I go through and I look and see what's new, what's being discussed, be like, and I find things like, oh yes, I've experienced that, and vote up on another, a couple other things. So definitely take some time to go take a look at that. Well, Gareth, I know there's a lot what we covered in here, but how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at SuperTechBoy, and that's tech is spelled TEK. I like to be a little bit edgy, and then also, yeah. I've also got the blog, which is supertechboy.com. You can find me on LinkedIn if you search Gareth Gudger. Apparently, there's not another Gareth Gudger in the 7 billion people on this planet.
Wow.
So you can find me real easy.
Wow.
And then also I work for Blue Chip Consulting Group. Our website's bluechip-llc.com.
And thanks a lot for your time here, Gareth. And I know that it's the weekend for both of us. I'm going to go back. I still got a long list of my honeydews to accomplish today. So, but it was great talking to you and connecting with you. And we'll talk again soon.